Paolo Banchero is, I'm sure you're aware of this, a somewhat divisive figure when we're talking from the national perspective, where this podcast stance is mostly he is hashtag that dude. But I think a lot of people kind of glom on to his efficiency through the first couple of years of his career. And they're like, oh, look at his true shooting percentage. And he's never shot better than 34% from three. What is the rebuke? We've made a rebuke to it. What is your rebuke? What is your response to it? Like, is it really I don't want to use the word simple, but like, look at the types of shots he's taking. Look at the defensive attention he's commanding. Look at the level of responsibility he has shouldered on the offensive end, not just as a shot maker and scorer, but just like the primary ball handler and facilitator and driver of the offense because of the players that have been in place around him. And then I also don't know how you watch the playoffs. Granted, it was, he's only there for 7 games, but it's his first taste of playoff basketball. And he's just an absolute monster, averaging 27 points, 4 assists, shooting 40% from three on real volume. I think I'm more so asking, like, is there any justification behind like the concern about his, you can look at the free throws and say, okay, it'd be nice if he made those at a higher clip, but I don't know how you look at the circumstances under which he has played his first 2 seasons. And I'm not saying throw it out the window, but kind of understand why his efficiency is where it is.
Yeah, no, all what you said, plus the fact that in his sophomore season, he was in the top 10 of most doubled players in isolation. And in those instances, I mean, he usually does a good job of hitting the gaps. I've never watched him and I felt like he isn't hitting the gaps. If the team is switching against him or ducking under him, I've been pretty okay with how quickly he's pulling up. And when he isn't pulling up, he's firing one-hand cross-court passes with Zion Williamson draped all over him to an open Gary Harris in the corner, only to watch Gary brick that wide open three-pointer. So as the season grew, I believe that both Jamal Mosley and Paolo Banchero got better in that regard. Following the All-Star break, there was a stretch of games against the Raptors and the Kings where the 2-guard, whether that was Gary Harris, but he was injured for a little bit, so Caleb Houston took that role. They would set a flex screen for Paolo to come off, flipping the sides of the block that he was on, immediately near the nearest wing defender, whoever that would be, would switch to blitz Paolo, and that would result in Paolo immediately passing to an open Franz Wagner or Jalen Suggs for automatic three-pointers. So I think having a stationary and moving perimeter threat alongside the first-time All-Star is invaluable. With the addition of KCP, drafting De Silva, hopefully Jet Howard getting minutes this season, just giving him more reliable targets and an extra step defenses have to process before thinking about, yeah, let's blitz this guy without having it to be a direct causation of, yeah, every time we want to get Paolo open, we got to draw plays routinely for this guy.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see like the data on how many times he needs to give the ball up to then go out. Like if he's getting the ball in the elbow or in the post, and then there's like the doubles already there, he has to kick it back out, then go up and set a screen to get the ball back in a somewhat advantageous situation. It feels like he might be among the league leaders in like the amount of times that is needed to happen. And you don't want, I was going to ask you, like, what does the next frontier look like for him? And there's a bunch of things you could focus on. It might be a question of what does the next frontier look like for the Magic, to where maybe he doesn't always have to work so hard to get his points.
Yeah, no, like I said, I think you surround him with the invaluable addition of, like I said, KCP, drafting De Silva, hopefully Jet Howard getting minutes this season, just giving him more reliable targets and an extra step defenses have to process. Like I said before, we're thinking about, let's blitz this guy. But I think going back to your point about what the next frontier looks like for Paolo's so awesome that I think the next frontier for him has to do more with more mechanically and structurally. I want his comfort with the feel of the game and his relationship with Jamal Mosley to evolve. I think I saw both those things grow exponentially throughout the season, and it carried over into the playoffs. I remember watching a play while Franz was shooting free throws against the Cavs. I believe it was Game 5. Mosley called for wide stack from the sideline, and from Paolo Banchero quickly motioned over to him and was like, I don't want to run wide stack right now. I want you to give me the Isaac Okoro matchup in isolation and just let me go to work. And behold, he went to score 3 consecutive times with Okoro as his defender, 2 of which were fading away jumpers. And I think in January, I want to say it was January 7th against the Hawks, they were in a tip and knuck battle with the Atlanta Hawks with DeJounte Murray at the line. And Paolo called 77, which is the Orlando's double drag play for, and he didn't call it for himself. He called it for Caleb Houston, with the team down 3. And so he was willing to station himself as a screener within that play to generate an open 3 in the corner for Houston, who did convert the shot, which eventually led to Orlando winning an OT over Atlanta. So I think just him and Jamal Mosley kind of getting a better feel for each other going into year 3 and going into what I believe will be another playoff experience will just be good for him. And I think that's the next frontier for him, more so in a sense of, because that space is, I do believe, is going to come. And I couldn't tweet this, but I guess I'll say it. Orlando is pivoting away from their offensive coordinator, Jesse Mermis, from last season, and they've made a few promotions from within. So I do believe their offense will look different next season.
What do you think will be the big, even like keeping it to Paolo? If you had to predict, or I know you've laid out sort of your hope, but like what will then be the biggest difference for how he's used?
I want him to be used as a screener more, because now,
him in space, like if you have like actual spacing around him with him as a screener with just the passing instincts that I think he showcased, like even like the live dribble stuff from him has been really, really good, especially last season. Yeah, I would be all for seeing more of that.
Yeah, I mean, almost every single time that he operated as a screener, whether that was against I remember one of the games against Toronto, he was having a terrible night. I think he was 4 for 11 or 4 for 13 or something crazy like that in the first half. And I remember shutting my computer off at halftime and saying that, damn, I want them to use Paolo as a screener to alleviate that pressure, because all Toronto was doing was just absolutely blitzing him. And lo and behold, to open the second half, they actually started Joe Ingles at point, and they just ran pick and rolls with Paolo as a screener, using Joe Ingles' 3-point shooting as a threat. And I think, given and provided the right offensive structure around Paolo, and assuming that Jet Howard does see minutes, and KCP and Gary Harris and Jalen Suggs all get better and evolve as 3-point shooters, and Franz's 3-point shooter comes along as well, the heights that Paolo's offensive structure can go to as a screener alone would be invaluable.
Do you believe this is more of just it's my own agenda? Do you believe in the step back from Paolo?
No, I do not believe in a step back at all. I genuinely,
you're a hater. Let's move on.
I genuinely despise seeing a step back, and I'll tell you the reason why I don't like seeing a step back. And maybe I'm just having like nightmares from watching what he did against the Kings and the Warriors. There were 2 instances this season, and it was down the stretch where they could have locked up a potential number 2 seed. And both times the Magic were down 3 against the Kings and the Warriors with about a minute and 15 left to go in the closing, in the final quarter of regulation. And I actually went back and I watched the tape today because I knew you were going to bring this up. With 16 seconds left on the shot clock, he took a step back 3, and they didn't run the play that was being called for on the sideline at all. And he did that multiple times over the course of the season. I'm just outlining 2 for you. So I just don't enjoy seeing him, especially take a step back 3, especially given the circumstances of those games.
I think so. You cover this team, watch them way more than I do, but my argument against that would be if he used it as a crutch to where it felt like he was in high volume, like kind of leaning on that too much. Like, this isn't James Harden or Luka Doncic. There was that game, I can't remember which game it was against Cleveland, but like it's in the third quarter. the shot clock's at like 7 or 8, and like you now have this guy, he drains a step back like with 4 or 5 seconds left on the shot clock from above the break. Like to have that in your arsenal, and it happens after surveying the floor for a couple seconds. He's not making it a dead ball. And if you were also watching, not you watching, like if we're watching his other 3-pointers, it's not like, oh, he's catching it and then has to like go into his dribble moves. I believe in it as, I think I believe in it so much because it feels like an interesting counter, or it's like when you look at what Nikola Jokic does, completely different players. I want to make that clear. But like he gets the ball, these grenades, what could be grenades all the time. And he just has the ability to get to the Sombor shuffle or throw off these ridiculous off balance jump shots that go in. And it's like, they're never a crutch. They're never a crux of his game. And I don't feel that way with Paolo. It feels more like, I know, look, the percentages aren't there just yet. He shot like, I think he only made one step. The step back I'm actually referencing the playoffs might have been his only step back of the series that went in. But like to have that tool, and I think you look at just how comfortable he seems getting to it and the space that he kind of generates on it without too much effort. And he just has the size to shoot over guys to begin with. I'm just not used to seeing someone who's not a wing sized, like there are wings that are as tall as him, but he's built like a big, like an actual forward. And to see someone like that just get to a step back, and looking at how fluid it looks to me, I'm a believer in it. I'm not saying he needs to take 5 a game, but I believe.